Well, welcome back to our podcast with Landing Real Estate. I am Lisa DiBiase,
I am Matt DiBiase.
and we are excited today to bring a conversation about buyers representation. What does it mean? What does it look like? And kind of digging into that conversation. So the first question is, how does a buyer's agent help in the process?
So that's the $1 million question, right? Buyer agents, help you as a buyer, especially a new buyer, navigate the home buying process. They're going to get you set up on an automatic search. They're going to help you through the lending pre-approval situation. They're going to really, again, navigate the whole situation for you as a buyer.
I think to piggyback that, the buyer's agent also brings a level of negotiation skills. They bring market trends, so they study the market on a daily basis, where normal buyers out there don't really know all about the ins and outs of a community and what makes a neighborhood better versus another neighborhood. And then I guess the other piece to that, so you got the negotiation, the expertise of the neighborhood. They also know the communities and the trends of what's happening inside those communities, like with activities, events, and just common things that maybe a natural buyer wouldn't know.
Yeah. I mean, and also you have the inspection, and they're going to navigate the inspections for you. Obviously, get it set up, pick an inspector for you, or help you pick an inspector, and then go over, and go through the report, what's important, what's not important. Again, get the home to be, in the quality that it should be for the buyer.
Yeah. Another thing that buyer agents do is they do the market analysis. So when a buyer is coming to the decision of making an offer, they will provide that market analysis of the property. Can you talk about what aspects of a market analysis and why it's important?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, the buyer actually has to have a buyer's written agreement for them to do the market analysis. But, in this market, it's imperative that, the buyer agents know the market. And, it can go both ways. Obviously, you can have a home that's been on the market for, quite some time. The buyer agent will maybe help out the buyer understand why it hasn't sold. Why has it been on the market, 2 or 3 weeks or months or whatever. And then if it's a hot market or a hot property, the buyer agent can do a market analysis on, maybe the overprice, on the asking over value. So that's where a buyer agent can come into play for both markets.
Funny story. You mentioned that a house being on the market for 2 to 3 weeks being a long time.
Right.
Remember the days when we used to market, we would say under contract in 45 days.
Right. Yeah. 90 days was the average days on market.
Anyway,
so, a little different.
Went down the memory lane there.
Right. Yeah.
One of the important things you just mentioned was the written agreement that buyers enter into when they decide to work with a realtor. Can you go over some of the highlights of that written agreement and why it's important that a buyer enters into one before they work with a buyer or agent?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, a good buyer agent, is going to go over the forms with you anyway as a new buyer. And then there are different duties and, that we can do, fiduciary duties that buyer agents can do. So if a buyer and a buyer agent are actually just a customer, then the buyer's agent can't do certain things. They can't do a market analysis. They can't, do a lot of the things that a buyer agent would be able to do. Market analysis, give their opinions, really, handhold them at that point.
Right. So in this challenging market, give me a quick story about buyer representation and maybe an example.
Again, in this market that is constantly changing, and different markets within the state, Greater Portland, some markets are hot, some are not so hot, some are, transitioning, however you want to look at it. So a seasoned buyer's agent, or even an agent that knows the market, is imperative today, completely necessary. I had a great story where a client said to me, I can totally see the value of working with, a top producer or an agent that really, really knows the market inside and out. Some agents or a lot of agents have their license, and that's great. They do a couple deals here and there, but they don't know the market and they don't know the tricks or the trades or, and things like that. So,
Yeah.
he had said that, I 100% can see the value of working with someone like yourself to know, how to navigate, a competing offer situation, or a backup situation or an escalation clause. And again, that's kind of what ultimately they're paying for,
Right.
So that's where, the value really can be, in choosing the right agent.
I agree. And, agent to agent, there's the experience sets those people apart from other agents is
Right.
that experience. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's thousands of agents, running around, and unfortunately, some are different than others.
right.
And that's where the top agents really do come into play.
Another question that I do have would be, I think the audience would appreciate kind of an insight to this is how can you, the buyer, make your offer enticing to the seller over other offers? Because I think what's happening is price is always at the end of the day going to be the main focus for the seller. It's their net dollar that they're
Right.
getting in their pocket. But I think that there are, like you said, some seasoned agents that have some tricks in there. Can you share maybe a couple examples?
Well, so again, we have mastermind meetings twice a week, and that question comes up every single time. So that's the real $1 million question. How to separate yourself from other properties or other offers. Sorry, and yeah, price always is always a determining factor. However, a lot of the offers we're seeing are coming in at the same price point because the market does level out. At some point, the buyers aren't going to pay any more than X, and you'll see 3 or 4, offers come in at the same price. But the difference is, again, what's the determining factor? So obviously, financing is the big one. What type of financing do you have? Is it a local lender or is it a national lender? That comes up a lot. Obviously, Maine, we like local, right? We like our local lenders, and we like people that we can trust and know, or at least call and talk to. That's usually the big one. Inspections, time of inspections comes up a lot, and then there's a couple other tricks that we won't tell. We'll keep
You'll have to
those.
work with a land and
We'll
real
keep those
estate agent.
with our company,
I like that. I can appreciate that. So, a question that we do get a lot these days is why do I need to have buyer representation?
right? We get that all the time,
Yeah.
right? A seasoned buyer agent, is imperative in today's market. And, a good buyer agent, will sit down with a buyer, one-on-one, go over the forms, go over, what the buyer's expectations are, what they're looking for, the different markets, what's a hot market, what's going on in this market, locations, Willard Beach is a great area, very sought after, going to go over things like that. And then, they're obviously going to help you find the property, show the property, obviously, and then help you with negotiations, then once you go under contract, which is the good day,
Hard to get
inspections,
by these days.
go under contract and everyone's high-fiving, and then, inspections, and then, help out with the appraisal if necessary with the lender, and then, get you to the closing table.
Yeah.
So that's obviously what the buyer agent is supposed to do, in a perfect world.
Right. And I think that the buyers out there, especially in this type of market where they're hard to come by and get under contract because there's bigger buyer pool than there is listings available. So I do think that the buyers out there do see the value in that representation today. So
Right. Yeah.
I think you said it well.
Yeah, I think a buyer agent, will really help buyers navigate, what to do, in this market, and
that
ultimately,
process.
get them to the closing table.
One thing that you mentioned before, actually very important, was financing and why that's important on a contract to a seller.
Right.
Can you explain that?
So when I sit down with a buyer, I tell them exactly what a seller is going to be looking at. And, if we have multiple offer situations, we show them all to the seller and we go through every single one. And the first question they're going to ask is, what type of financing do they have? And a lot of times sellers feel more comfortable with the lender being a local lender. Mainers, we like buying local. We like Mainers, right? So anytime we put down or put across the table a national brand, not to name any names, and the sellers go, oh boy, this is going to be a pain, or they don't know our market, or they don't know the appraisers, and I've heard horror stories, and they're more of like just a big conglomerate of offers
And
or
it's also
deals.
coming from the listing agent as well,
Yeah,
because the listing agent definitely wants to be able to call that mortgage broker that's
yeah,
local to be able to say, hey, obviously can't share any information, but tell me how solid of a buyer this
right.
person is.
Yeah.
To have that
Yeah, and the
relationship is
and the
key.
listing agent is going to have a relationship 9 times out of 10 with the lenders that we are pre-approved with. So again, like you said, it's important that the listing agent can reach out and even text. A lot of times we know the other lenders on the other side and just say, hey, everything good with this buyer, and they'll say yes, absolutely. And there's a level of confidence with that listing agent. So that's why it can be the determining factor at the end of the day for the listing agent to accept that, or the seller to accept that offer.
Yeah. I think also with the financing, the second part to the answer to that question is what type of financing. You've got the conventional type loans, and then you've got a percentage being put down. I think the more money being put down, the more confident the agents and sellers feel about that buyer being able to purchase the
Yep.
property with little to no hiccups.
Yep.
And then you've got the government loans. So there's some interesting pieces in there.
Yeah, you're talking about conventional loan versus a FHA loan or rural development loan, and it's the conventional loans historically will be easier to get through. Appraisals should be easier to get through, and then the unfortunately the FHA, the RD, those loans are lower down payment, so the appraisals can be tougher. So again, it's all things created equal for the seller. That's where that kind of comes into play.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the first time buyers are the ones that get hit a little bit.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the sellers are going to look
Right.
out for their best interest.
Well, and then the the other phrase is cash is king.
And cash is always king.
And we have seen a lot of cash offers coming through. And I don't really have a specific answer to that. My thought process is perhaps these sellers are selling their properties in advance and setting themselves up to be a cash offer, when they're going to purchase.
Yeah, I've been saying it for a couple of years. Is when someone sells a home, say in South Portland, and they make a lot more money than they originally thought they would. They're going to have a lot more money to spend on the next property, and maybe not be cash, but they're going to put down
Right.
a big a big chunk, which if the prices hadn't gone up so much, they wouldn't have had that money. So, and they're not just taking off once they sell their property; they're going to go buy something else.
Right.
So,
Yep. Let's have just a quick chat about the market in general. Like, what trends are we seeing? Obviously, we are in the middle of a spring market today. What do you see?
yeah. So the market has exploded again, where we saw a little bit of a lull,
We did.
in the late winter months, which historically is absolutely going. And I don't know if it was the uncertainty of the market, the interest rates, the weather around here, we think played a big part. But the market going into the summertime has absolutely gotten going. We're seeing, again, multiple offers for sellers, way above asking. And unfortunately, kind of what we saw last couple of years ago, where buyers were having a hard time, buying property. I just, heard a fact that in the last few years, maybe 2 years, the summer market has been more aggressive or more sales than the spring market.
That's interesting.
It's crazy
Yeah.
for all the times, for 30, 40 years,
I
it was
know.
always a spring market, and that's
Yep.
nationwide, was always the biggest market to get into.
Yeah.
But the summer markets, which looking back, I can see that trend,
Right.
where the summer market was absolutely going and we were working right through the summer,
Yeah.
which again, 20 years ago, we could kind of, sit back a little bit. So I can definitely see that.
So for those that need a little explanation, the traditional real estate market has been that in the winter time, it's very slow. So that first quarter, January through March, is very slow. And then once spring hits, the market rises and transactions start to come. And then in the summertime, it levels out and then it would fall down into the fall and then transitioned over and over and over. But yeah, that's a typical real estate market. And now you're saying that we're seeing a more bigger spike in the summertime.
Yeah, my phone has been, been blowing up the last couple of weeks where in March and April, there's a lot of, I'm going to sell, I'm going to hold off, I'm going to sell again. Maybe I should hold off till next year. And then all of a sudden it's been, let's get it going. Let's get on the market. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
I want to sell. I want to sell. And, that's been great. And I can see that going around for everybody.
Yeah.
A lot of new listings are coming up every day,
Yeah.
which they
true.
weren't in, April or March
Right.
and things like that.
I feel like in the past, when I've sat down with the seller, I would always say, and this is before the spring market, and they say, I want to list in the spring. And I would always say, well, your aim is to be on the market in February or March because
Yeah.
you want to beat the spring market,
Beat the competition.
So there's always that layer. And then the other layer has always been like, you don't want to list past June. But that's history. It's
long
all
gone.
out the door.
Yep. Yeah. Again, that time, March, April, a lot of people that were planning on putting their home on the market just said, I want to hang out for a little bit. I'm not sure I want to do that. And then now people want to get their home on the market. They're doing it right away. We're
Yeah.
signing the paperwork right away. And again, we're coming right into June and
Yeah.
we're cranking.
Listings are coming on every single day.
Every day.
There's hope out there, buyers. There really are. I had also another comment, and I don't know if you want to play off of it, but I think sellers are really driving the market right now in terms of timelines, because it kind of speaks to what you were saying about people holding off and waiting a little bit before they put their homes on the market.
Yeah. I mean, if there's no inventory, then it's going to slow things down,
Yeah.
which will increase price.
Yeah.
And then now you're getting a lot of, sellers coming on the market, but we have so many buyers that they're just jumping on those as well.
Yeah.
Again, supply and demand.
Yep.
And we are starting to supply them, but they're being bought up so fast that it's,
Yeah.
it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
But the good news is sellers are putting their homes on the market now,
Yeah.
for the summertime. So again, it's going to be a fun market.
And, we have those interest rates that are still on the higher side, but it doesn't really seem like it slowed down the buyers. I think the buyers hopefully just picked up the pieces and said, it's either now or never. We got to get on the train and make it move. So
Yeah, I think at this point, everyone's gotten comfortable enough knowing where the market is and the interest rates are, and they've gotten used to seeing that 7 number.
Yeah.
If the interest rates drop, they'll refinance.
Yep.
And if they don't, then that's okay, because that means the rates went up and they got a good number.
Have you had to have that conversation with any of your buyers?
Every day,
Specifically?
every day, have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You can't sit back and wait. We hear all those stories where I was going to buy in 2020 and then I decided to wait in 2021, and now the home is valued at $200,000 more.
Yeah.
So they should have bought them back then. So I think at this point, the buyers have understood what is going on. They're going to buy. The rates aren't great. They're not going to brag about it. But if they drop, then great. They'll refinance. If they go up, then they got a good rate. And it is what it is.
Yeah. I think it's funny because the rates aren't that great. I hear you. And in comparison to where we've been in the last few years,
Right.
Sure, the rates aren't that great. But in reality, if you were to go back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the rates are fine. The rates are normal. And to be in that 5 to 7 range is normal.
Yep, it is normal, and and right now it's actually less than the average, really is or really was. So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Not much we can do.
Yeah. Take the excuses out of the process. So the moral of the story is go out there, get your real estate agent, and buy a home.